Welcome to Chapter 3 and Week 3 of Education 111. This week we're going to be learning about understanding and applying developmentally appropriate practices on our students. And for this week, I'm going to guide you through the presentation, and then you can go off and interact with it on your own. We'll start with our first slide, and this is a read-only slide. Read through the information on the slide. It should connect directly with what you've read in your textbook for Chapter 3. And then I pulled out this equation. I think it's really a good way to remember what developmentally appropriate practice looks like. So when you go back to that, think of these three simple things coming together. Then I'm going to have you make a connection. The quote on the right says, "You can struggle for weeks to teach a child to identify colors before they're ready, or you can do it in a few moments when they're ready to learn." This is a specific example about why developmentally appropriate practice in teaching is so important. And so when a child is not ready to learn, they're not going to be effective in your classroom. That's why we have to know our learners. What I'd like you to do is think of a time when you have observed this to be true with a child, or even when you yourself were not ready to learn something and then later on learned it when you were ready. I want you to share this specific example on our Padlet board, and this is going to be worth part of your 10 participation points for the week. By clicking on the words Padlet board, it will take you to this slide, and I know you can't read anything right now the way that it's positioned, but it looks like this, and you're going to think of that time where you connect. We move on to the NACCE position statement, and this is a document put out by NACCE, and it shares research-based stances taken by the organization in response to issues and problems in early childhood. On our next slide, I give you some history of the position statement, and then I'd like you to click on the iPad to see NACCE's most current position statement. This is what they deem developmentally appropriate for children birth to age 8. If you end up working with children ages birth through age 8, you will be responsible for upholding everything that is in this document. It is a guide for all early childhood educators. So I'd like you to take 5 minutes even and go through it. And it's long, but I want you to look at some of the categories and some of the headlines and even some of the examples within this position statement. And this is where NACCE stands on how we can be developmentally appropriate. But a lot of it makes sense. After reading it, if you have any questions, please message me. Then we're going to see what developmentally appropriate practice looks like in a classroom. Read the slide and then watch the video on the right and think about how the 2 goals that teachers must meet, and they're listed right here with the stars, are being met in this video. You don't need to post your answers, but I do want you to stop and think about it. See if you can pull out some of the reasons that these kiddos are having their needs individually met, that their needs are met within a group, and help them, the teacher is helping them attain goals. What do you see from this video? Then I want you to move on and talk specifically about these goals. I have a slide for each of the goals, and the first one is meeting children where they are, and this happens through observation. So read this slide, and then when we move on to the next slide, you're going to try this out. You're going to watch the video on the right. And I want you to pretend you are observing these children in real life. Choose one child, the boy, the girl in the back, or the girl in the front, and I want you to watch how they interact with the materials, the activity, or the people around them. You're going to watch all 3 categories. Then you're going to click right here where it says share, and you're going to share one specific thing that your child did that would impact your planning as the teacher. Now, so you're going to give one specific thing for materials, activities, and people on the Padlet board. And I do have a little bit of an example here I can show you. Whoops. The example says, name the child that you observed. Was it the boy, the girl with pigtails, or the girl with curls? How did that specific child interact with the materials? How did they interact with the activity? how do they interact with the people around them, and what impact does this have on your planning as a teacher? And that's going to, again, be for participation points out of that 10 points that you'll be gathering this week. We move on to the second goal, and that's helping children reach their own individual goals. And we talk about the balance you have to strike as the teacher between challenging the students and moving through material that they've already mastered and finding that sweet spot that just makes it all work for them. So read this slide and it gives you a lot of information. Then we'll talk about intentional teaching, which is one of the ways we get to those goals. Now, in our first week for Chapter 1, we discussed intentional teaching, and you watched some videos to see what that looks like. This just takes it one step further and shares how intentional teaching and developmentally appropriate practices go hand in hand, and some guidelines for being an intentional teacher. Also, being an intentional teacher is about making purposeful decisions. I'd like you to check out the slide, and as you read it, click on the podcast right here on the Listen and Learn video. You don't have to watch anything, but it will give you audio that matches the slide and talk about the purposeful decisions we make as educators. Then you're going to try it out, and this is our second try it out of the presentation. We're going to, again, watch the video in the corner, and you're going to choose a few episodes in that video. So the video is about 7 minutes long, and it skips from different activities that these boys and girls do during the day. Kind of watch a little bit, and then you can move the video along and watch a little bit more, move the video along. So you don't have to watch all 7 minutes, but watch a few of the little episodes there. Within what you watch, look for decision making going on by the teachers in the video. What decisions do they make that were mediated? And what decisions do they make that were immediate? And if you go back to the list on slide 12, that will help you pick out some specifics. Then you'll go into our Padlet board by clicking right here and give one specific decision that a teacher made for each category. So you'll give one specific mediated decision and one specific immediate decision. Remember, sometimes good decision making looks like the child was in charge, but sometimes it was just careful planning by the teacher, so don't get fooled. When we move on, we'll talk about, again, balancing appropriate decision-making in the classroom. And as the teacher, you not only balance your instructional decisions, but everything that you do is going to be based on these 3 criteria. Is it age appropriate for a child? Is it individually appropriate? And is it culturally appropriate? And I want you to read through those definitions and see if you can apply it to a classroom situation in your mind. Then we come to the role of the teacher, and the role of the teacher is big. It has 5 spokes of this star. Click on the Listen and Learn podcast, and for each of the 5 spokes, I will give specific examples of what that means and what your job will be as the teacher. It's very important, though, that you listen to the podcast when it's on the presentation because it really gives you more information than the slide shares. Also, we talk about widening the lens, and you might not really know what I'm talking about when I show you this slide until you listen. So what I'd like you to do is click on the Listen and Learn podcast, and I'll explain this to you because it's a very important practice we have in our early childhood classrooms. We're moving along to the end of our presentation, and one of the things that we see is just the importance of developmentally appropriate practice on our learners and the positive effects that they have for the future of themselves as learners going into public school, going into kindergarten, and then throughout their life as a learner. Click on the podcast and listen to me explain this slide to you in detail. We're now at the end of our information for Chapter 3, and I'm going to introduce something that many of you have been excited about, and that's observation time. So, first of all, we're going to have this observation project that everyone knew about, and it requires you to complete 10 hours of scheduled observations. So what I'd like you to do right now is go into D2L, grab the observation project handout, the 15-minute snapshot handout, and the teacher signature form. from the course projects folder, and these are also in the week 3 folder just for your ease, and have them ready as you watch this project intro on how the observation project works. After you know about the observation project, I'm going to introduce you specifically to your first observation, which is a 2-hour after-school observation. What you'll need is the after-school observation directions and the after-school observation checklist. I'd like you to have those ready from D2L and then watch this project intro video specifically about when you observe in your after-school environment. Just another word, I know I said this in the video you'll watch, but you may not observe until you receive specific email from me saying your clearances are all in order. For most of you, that should happen before Monday morning when you're watching this. So if you have not received that email from me and it's now Monday, please stop and wait. You may not enter the schools. That is a HAC policy, and that is a school district policy or observation policy. Wrapping it up, these are your assignments for the week. Remember, everything that is due is on this last slide. So if you have questions, come back to this slide. For our 10 participation points, you have 3 activities that were built into this presentation. You're going to do the Padlet board of the developmentally appropriate connection on slide 4. You're going to do the Padlet board on observation when you watch those little kiddos at the sensory table on slide 9, and the Padlet board on decision making at slide 13. That will gauge your 10 participation points for the week. Also, when you are cleared by me through email, you're going to schedule and complete 2 hours of observation in an after-school environment. When you have completed your 2 hours, these are the things that will go in the Dropbox: the after-school checklist, the 15-minute snapshot, and you'll need a teacher signature form. The teacher signature form will need to be signed once if you visit once and stay for 2 hours. If you go and you stay for 1 hour and you do that twice, you'll need 2 signature forms in the Dropbox. And that gives me, that basically confirms that you were there. The last thing you need to do is read through chapter 4 and skim it, just skim it. And this is to prepare you for next week's presentation. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. And please remember to have active participation in your presentation this week.